Okay, welcome back. As just a quick reminder before I introduce Kabir, who should need no introduction, but before I do that, if you have missed any part of our session, we will have a full recording of it available today at any time through Hopin on the side of, on the menu side of the page, where you can click a link and watch it right from the beginning or any one part that you might have missed. Okay. Kabir, welcome to our annual Investor Day.
I love the new musical tone for La La
Did you like the light
Man.
box? Light
Love it.
box. So
Love the sound.
I have to tell you that a lot of people are really nervous in my office because, as you know, Seema from Google was going to join us to tell us all about how Google loves you. But unfortunately, because we are delayed, she wasn't able to accommodate, and now I'm left all alone with you, and anything could happen in the next 20 minutes. And so I'm going to read a disclaimer. We are not responsible for anything you might say.
Sid, you're a party all by yourself.
Kabir, talk to us about the current scope and scale of Dunzo.
Whew. So no, I think we've gone through multiple changes over the last year. I think one of the biggest things that I think we have realized is delivering daily and weekly essentials to customers is the core part of our business, which most likely is going to start coming from some version of a first party what you call infrastructure rather than trying to come from a marketplace of local stores only. So we've been rolling out, and I think we spoke about it last year. We've been rolling out what you call warehouses that stock the most important items that people buy. Think quick commerce, think consumables, within 2.5 kilometer radius of every urban Indian customer. I think by the end of the year, we'll be close to about 60 to 65 odd warehouses in about 3 different cities. That business is scaling really quickly. It's grown 10x in the last 5 months. And so potentially the goal really is to try and say, okay, can we get to about, 15 million transactions coming just from warehouses in 12 months time. Today, we are about 1 million transactions a month.
Our last investor day, we we were coming out of the first wave of COVID, and I was telling at least the group that's on camera, I mean that's watching this right now, and we were telling a lot of people as well. Look, this quick commerce delivery is really Dunzo. There aren't very many other players out there. What happened in the last 12 months? Where globally, in fact, not only in India, where my mom's calling me saying, "Listen, can I have Dunzo's business plan because I'd like to go and start one of these things."
Oh man. I think my biggest read on entrepreneurship in general is you have to survive till you get hot. It's just really what startups look like. Either you start a copycat, I think Jadip said, and I loved this session by the way, right? Or you go plugging at it till a point where the category takes off and it gets hot. I think the second one is true for us. We were never something that people could say, okay, what box do I put you in from a global competitor or a global landscape perspective? I'm actually delighted about what's happened in the last 12 months. People are able to go ahead and give the category a name, is able to box us. My pitch meetings are down to like 7 minutes now. So it's like, this is what it is. It's pretty straightforward. We've been doing it for 2.5 years. We're number one in India. We will grow this by 20x over the next 24 months time. The business model works. The retention is great. Customers tend to love it. And they keep coming back. Frequency is staying up. This is now a box that needs to be rolled out to 500 odd locations in the top 20 cities in the country. And I'll be honest, I think we must thank GoPuff and Getir, etc., to be able to go ahead and create a lot of the understanding globally. And it's really helping. More than happy about what's happened in the last 12 months. I put all my money into Dunzo, so really can't put money anywhere else. But I would recommend your mom also to put money.
All right, tell me, what advantage, and actually we've discussed this back and forth a lot over the past year. What advantage do you have, having done both a marketplace as well as a quick pick up and drop business over the years that you might have versus a lot of companies that are starting off immediately into the dark store fulfillment arena? Obviously, there's a reason why you're doing a certain number of minutes promise as far as the delivery is concerned versus others. You're stocking different things. Can you walk us through the core insight that led to your particular strategy and what you're doing and how the rest of the ecosystem is developing?
Okay, so fundamentally, this is three broad areas to talk about, right? The first one is I think there is just a consumer trend for going ahead and what you call adding more digitization to their commodity transactions. That's really what all of this is, right? So what you saw with ride sharing, what you saw with food delivery is what you will see with something happen with consumables, daily, weekly, grocery, essentials, deliveries getting done. Right? People want to be able to make these boring transactions become digital and not have to think about it. Right? So that's one trend that's just happening globally. The second one is this requires you to be, it's distinctly different than the first two trends on demand because it requires you to be a tech business, logistics business, and a retail business. You can't choose to say, I'm not going to do one of the three. You have to be just great at all the three of them. Which brings us fundamentally to the things that we are doing and the things that we see in all of these that we can do differently, or what our learnings have been for us to set ourselves up for being number one. The first one is, I think, so we haven't gone about necessarily looking at the assortment based upon what global players are seeing and what a lot of what you call convenience grocery looks like across the landscape in India also. We are realizing that the biggest what you call winning requirement in this category is two things. One is your assortment strategy needs to be dramatically data driven than anything that anybody's ever seen offline, or even retailers anywhere else have seen. So we are at this point of time starting to really go ahead and try to understand consumer patterns, try to start predicting consumer patterns. We are learning stuff that we are then having to go ahead and push back into our second capability that we are building. It's about in terms of how do we build a really robust supply chain to be able to go ahead and make sure that literally from farmers and manufacturers, product can come directly into these warehouses and from warehouses get delivered to the customer. When you are running a really small assortment, right, and the assortment is literally a forcing function in our business because we want to get deep, close to about 2.5 kilometer distance to customers, we need to be able to do a 2,000, 2,500 square feet warehouse. Anything beyond that is not going to turn profitable. At that scale, we are most likely looking at stocking anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 odd SKUs. And that automatically brings a forcing function on what we will go ahead and stock. Think of this as the most optimized supply chain that will exist for the most important items that people buy in a geography. It's going to basically determine what people, what you call manufacturer, what people farm, and those items can get directly what you call put into these warehouses, and from the warehouses directly go to the customer. And that's literally our version of what should end up happening for the actual quick items that people need, right? So the assortment strategy, what we picked was based upon what most urban middle income households will really look forward to. We believe that there is no structured way to buy fresh in this country at this point of time. It's also most likely the hardest problem that needs to get solved. And we have seen massive, what you call, retention jumps, frequency jumps, as well as we have been able to attract customers in absolutely newer cohorts to come and actually try the product out and actually go ahead and retain on the platform. I think it's very Indian as an insight. Indian cooking requires you to go ahead and buy fresh 3 times a week. There's no predictable way to go buy it. You find a structured player who delivers it to you in 20 minutes time before you decide to start cooking. And boom, you can go ahead and start creating a new behavior altogether. Which is why Jaideep's conversation regarding category creation and behavior creation is really important. It goes ahead and you iterate all the way till the point, and now suddenly our TAM, which I think last year I would have told you would have been at about 10, 15 million customers, I think looks most likely like close to about 60, 70 million customers. in the top 20 cities in the country.
Talk to us a little bit about the difficulty in the supply chain attached to fresh, because till now, till you started doing fresh, supply chain was mostly non-perishable items that were being delivered, or a pick up and drop, which someone is just going to. Now you're getting into something that the word fresh in itself just causes problems in supply chain in our country. And so now you're saying, look, I'm going to have these staples, they're fresh, they're going to be fresh every single day and through the entire day. How complex is this, and how difficult is it to implement city by city by city?
It's not easy. It's complex.
Thank you very much.
But
next question.
yes. Yeah, it is, right? But I think that's what the best businesses do, right? They make it really simple for the customer and abstract the complexity. And that's the job. So our average delivery times are at about 12 and a half, 13 minutes. That's not non-complex or non-trivial, but it's taken us about 2.5 years time to get there, and we'll keep plugging at it. I think the fresh challenge is similar in nature, but what we are doing is we're starting to iterating on literally everything in the supply chain. We're starting to iterate in terms of who the suppliers can be, how can we go ahead and create 10, 15-year long-term relationships with them. How can we determine based upon the demand patterns what we are seeing? How can they go ahead and actually produce it? We are trying to look at as to how products are being carried and make sure that they're carried in different levels rather than in one big container, so that the bottommost product is not getting pressed because of all the things that are there about that. We are trying to figure out in packaging how to go ahead and reduce plastics entirely. So that one of the big things that is a challenge is how do we make sure that the fresh breathes on a while it is in the supply chain and while it is in the warehouse. So making it breathe is like an entirely different problem to go ahead and figure out. We are also trying to figure out as to how can we automate quality checks. So literally, the final version of this that we hopefully plan to implement is that the warehouse today has some version of automation. But we believe that in about 12 months time, we should be able to have one automated warehouse where that we can then deploy to about 500 of them, where the product is actually just moving on a conveyor belt and there are being pictures taken in different angles to be able to just check for the quality of the product. And we don't necessarily need any kind of human inspection or something like that. But it's basically going ahead and solving for a problem that nobody has solved for till date. We seem to have a really large market because we have figured out how customers want to consume the product. Because we know how customers want to consume the product, we will have enough demand to be able to deploy exponentially larger resources at this problem. And that's really what we're doing.
I think a lot of this was a lot of learning because you centered and focused on one city to kind of to test a lot of this stuff out on, make sure that we got it right. So Bangalore became like this this test center for us. How much of an advantage is it to have managed this in Bangalore and gotten to a certain scale in Bangalore to be able to push this out to other cities without feeling like you'll be doing the same kind of massive testing to figure out whether things have worked or not? That fact that you've gotten to where you've gotten in Bangalore versus maybe others who might not have in other cities or any city.
So I think there's a lot of learning curve that ends up happening as CEOs and founders of companies, right? I've been guilty of trying to do too many things at the same time in say 2018, 19, right? And I think my biggest learning out of that was if you get the box perfect, right, at a scaled size, you can replicate the box infinitely. And it's not a challenge after that, right? But fix all your problems in a box. Because otherwise what tends to happen is from a management bandwidth perspective, team bandwidth perspective, you're then starting to deal with geographical factors, supply chain factors, multiple other problems start going on and your data starts looking very noisy. So we are great believers of trying to get the box done perfectly, and then scaling the box has never been the challenge. So what we said was we will go ahead and become the biggest quick commerce business in any city in the country. So I think we should close in at about 1.5 million transactions just in Bangalore maybe in the next 60 days time. And that scale I do know nobody else has in one city. right? And then to be able to scale that is the challenge that is much easier to go solve for, and we have solved for that before. I'll also be honest; it comes from a fundamental belief of commerce businesses. I think first mover advantages are slightly overrated. I think in commerce businesses, what tends to win is your insight and your execution skills, and whether you can keep going at it every day from a customer perspective. Because at the end of the day, what you're really trying to do is you're trying to build a DNA that's willing to iterate much faster for a customer. That's what will win, because you want to win over a 5-10 year period. The first customer or the first mover advantage tends to last you for maybe like a 6 month time horizon at best. And so once that belief got created, we were very convinced that, hey, that has only that much value. Let's just go ahead and create a box that has what you call solved for all the problems. And so once it's solved all the problems, going ahead and replicating it across 50 cities in the country should not really be a challenge.
Let's talk a little bit about capital allocation. There's a lot of money globally and in India being thrown at this problem right now. Have you noticed that? I assume that you've seen that happening.
No, I don't do investor
No, you don't know.
calls.
You don't know. You don't know. Okay, so let me tell you, Kabir. A lot of money is being thrown at this globally. Uh, Obviously, capital allocation plays a big role, especially in vertically integrated business. Not only yours, in all vertically integrated businesses. Can you talk to us about how you're making capital allocation decisions right now? Where are your biggest costs going to be going forward, and where are you going to be concentrating your energy when it comes to money spent?
Uh, regarding
That's
the
very
capital
that's
being
great to hear.
regarding the capital being thrown at the category, right? I have a joke. I think 6 months back I mentioned it some investor call. I was like, I don't know if customers want this category or not. VCs will make sure it gets created.
We can't cut this. You know that, right? This is live.
I know, but let's be honest, it's really what it looks like. So, coming quickly to capital allocation, right? Three large areas there, and they consistently seem the same, I think, on this category. One is to just create the infrastructure. That I think is going to be one of our biggest investments. Um, I think our where we are with the
Sorry,
box
your
right now is
infrastructure. I just want to be clear. Your infrastructure, you mean the dark warehouses, the supply chain? Is that what you're referring to?
yeah, that's what I refer
Okay,
to, right?
all right.
So I'll give you some economics on that also. We spend about 150K USDs in setting up the warehouse, stocking it up, and running it for the first 7 months. When we most likely lose money on it till it gets to about 1,000 transactions a day, right? Once we tip over the 1,000 transactions a day, we start making money at our warehouse, which means from 1,000 to 2,000 transactions a day, which is what its capacity is pure profit. And so our estimate is that we spend the 150K over the first 6 or 7 months time, and we should be able to recuperate all of that in the first 20 months, completely paid back for. Right. So that's one of our biggest expense. The second one is we are. I'll be honest. We are going ahead and making some disproportionate investments on technology, and trying to go ahead and really reimagine as to what this could look like. Honestly, this is a convenience store network. That's really what it creates. We do believe that if it is that much of a commodity retail, most likely you are going to see a lot of automation play out in the warehouse as well as in the delivery leg. Because the more dense you get, the lesser it's going to be aerial delivery and more maybe what you call on-ground automated delivery. We don't necessarily know what that might look like, but we are making some disproportionate investments in terms of saying on technology, what can we go build out over the next year and a half's time to just know as to what the end point on this looks like from a what you call dropping cost perspective. Like all retail businesses, our business is about dropping cost. Revenue is people continue to keep buying this continuously, right? We can keep increasing EOV, we can keep increasing frequency, but share of wallet is really what we're competing for, right? But a large winning strategy comes out of us going ahead and figuring out how to drop cost. Right. So that's the second one. The third one in India is really we have to acquire customers. We have realized that our cohorts stay strong at most levels. At this point of time, literally our number one priority over the next 12 months is to activate 10 million customers.
I'm
We'll
sorry, to
activate 10
activate
million.
what, Kabir?
Activate 10 million customers.
10
So
million.
10 million customers have to try Danzo daily in the next 12 months. That's
Okay.
literally our number one goal.
Let's talk about, actually, one second. How much time do we have? Okay, so we have time. Let's talk about that for just for a minute. There's a lot of criticism Again, a lot of it is global because this sector is played out a little bit more globally. But there's a lot of criticism along online groceries, and the CAC is very high, and the switching cost is very low. Do you think that there's a misunderstanding about your business? And can you kind of clarify what will drive ultimate success here? Like, acquiring customers is one part of it, keeping them is another. Is there a low cost to switching for a customer? And what makes a customer stay, and what justifies the high cost of customer acquisition in your mind, in our country at least?
So India's challenge is not the cost of the customer; it's what you get from them in terms of revenue and gross margin. And with the AOVs that we have, the amount of gross margin that you're generating is
From a lifetime
sometimes
value kind of standpoint.
correct. I think lifetime LTV comes in at about 12 to 18 months time. Right, depends upon geographies. Our average comes into about 14 or 15 months. Um, is it good enough? Can it be lower? Yes, it should be lower. That I agree with you. But I think we play in these really large spaces in India and create brands significantly before the adoption curve for a lot of customers have gotten created. That's the reality of India. Right. And so that actually shows up on all LTV numbers for most businesses that play very large surfaces on B2C. It's got to do with the fact that you want to be able to create a brand, you want to be able to create a business, while India's populace is actually growing towards going out and adopting some of this and starting to pay the right value for the service that they are going out and getting. So that's one take that we have. We are actually happy with our 14, 15 month LTV at this point of time. Quickly coming to switching costs, right? So till date, right, I think platforms in these categories have looked very similar. So there is no difference. There's no difference between what a food delivery platform, one versus the other, versus a ride sharing platform, and even e-commerce selection is very different. I do have a hunch that this category might play out differently. I'll tell you the reason for it. The reason it is basically you have this forcing function on selection, right? You need to go ahead and get really close to customers, get it within. So we have seen difference in retention between 20-minute and 30-minute delivery. No difference between 10 minutes and 20 minutes. And so we went ahead and picked the 20-minute this, saying this is really what customers are, what you call, great at. This is where the highest retention point that we are seeing at, right? And we'd like to be able to keep it at whatever the retention, what you call, drop-off looks like. That's the point that we'd like to keep our promise at. Which means you need to get to a particular level of density, which means your size of warehouses has to be a particular kind, because that's the catchment that you're really looking at. As soon as you look at saying that, hey, there are going to be only 1,500, 2,000 odd SKUs, etc., I think people will go ahead and end up taking a retail positioning in customers' minds. What exactly am I solving for you? Because I can't solve everything, right? I can't solve all of your needs that you need from a grocery perspective and stuff like that. I think the akin to that is really what ends up happening in local spaces, right? So when you go to a local market, right, you end up seeing 4 or 5 different brands there. You see a Namdhari's, you see a More, you see a Limarche, you see a Food Hall sometimes. You also see an Easy Day, and you also see like Angel Supermarket. And all the 5 or 6 of them actually have a very different positioning with the customer and in their mind in terms of what they do for them. My hunch is primarily that that most likely a similar version of that might play out in India also from an online perspective. Given the forcing function on selection, saying you can't have more than these items, so you will go ahead and over-index on one particular kind of selection.
Right.
Somebody could just do alcohol, right? Somebody
Right.
could just do fresh like us. Somebody could do just private label. And they would all look very similar to what offline brands are looking like. I'll be honest, I don't think customers think like duopolies. I think capital makes duopolies happen. Right. So customers are basically looking for a product, for a job to be done, right? That's what they're looking for. And over here, because the selection difference is distinct enough, I do think the job to be done should be different. But I think time will tell. And yes, capital is a requirement. So capital duopolies can end up playing out, which might then end up reducing customer choices. But that's really the thing that we will all see the space move in the next, I think, hopefully 24 months. This will happen very quickly. The next 24 months time is going to be rapid innovation in this space now.
Just really quickly, where do you see yourself in 24 months? Where's Dunzo going to be? Not yourself. We don't really care that much about you personally.
Most likely on this call again.
At this time next 25. Where do you see Dunzo? No, we don't have time. Where do you see Dunzo in 24 months? What size-wise, people-wise, whatever it is, very quickly.
We hopefully will have about 15 million monthly transacting customers. We will have about $2.5 billion of annualized GMV, and we'll be in about 25 cities. For the next 24 months' time, we are only scaling this category. We will be the #1 leader in this category by a margin.
All right. Thank you very much, Kabir. Thanks for joining us. And we are on to the next session. Thank you.
Thank you.